be reading from the book of Exodus, chapters 35, verses 4 and 5, verses 20, 21, and chapter 36, verses 3 through 7. Moses said to the whole Israelite community, "This is what the Lord has commanded. From what you have taken an offering for the Lord. Everyone who is willing is to bring to the Lord an offering of gold, silver, and bronze." Then the whole Israelite community withdrew from Moses' presence, and everyone who was willing and whose heart moved them came and brought an offering to the Lord for the work on the tent of meeting, for all its service, and for the sacred garments. They received from Moses all the offerings the Israelites had brought to carry out the work of constructing the sanctuary, and the people continued to bring free will offerings morning and after morning. So all the skilled workers who were doing all the work on the sanctuary left what they were doing and said to Moses, "The people are bringing more than enough to do the work the Lord commanded to be done." Then Moses gave an order, and they sent this word throughout the camp: "No man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary." As so the people were restrained from bringing more, because what they had already had was more than enough to do all the work.
Thanks, Jerry, for that reading. It's good to see everyone. Many of you were able to be here last Sunday, but several of us weren't because of weather conditions. And so it does seem like, in many ways, the first Sunday of the year, having the larger family together. We want to continue to remember, as Dave mentioned before the shepherd's prayer, those who are dealing with sickness, those who are mourning the loss of loved ones in their families. Remember that the service for Warren Smith will be here tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. And if you'd like to visit with the family this afternoon, they'll be over at Floral Haven from 2 to 4. You can go any time from noon to 8 today, but the family will only be there from 2 to 4. I told these new brothers last Sunday that they would only have to stand up once during their tenure here, but I've been wrong about things before. And since some of you weren't here, I would like for Tony Goodson and Morgan Goodson to stand up again. They're right over here. This father and son were baptized into Jesus Christ on Wednesday night, January the 1st, and it was a wonderful, wonderful occasion. Many of you saw them, met them last week. For those of you who didn't, if you don't know the Goodson family yet, please meet them before you leave today. Thanks, brothers, very much. The new 444 ministry for our youth, primarily at this point, middle school and high school, will begin promptly at 444 in room 103 North. That's lower level, north wing. And you're going to learn more about this as we go along. A lot of the curriculum still being developed, but this is primarily for training, development, maturing, completing. If you read Mike's article in the bulletin this morning, the faith and the character of our youth. A lot's going to be focused on leadership training and development, on, for those who are interested, lesson development and preparation and delivery, preparing for works of service. And ultimately, others of us are going to have an opportunity to participate in that as well, as different classes are offered. And how that's going to work with our regular assembly is those who are involved in 444 will get started in the north wing at that time. The rest of us will start in here at 5 o'clock like we normally do on Sunday evenings. We'll sing, we'll pray, we'll read Scripture till about 5:25. When they break, we'll have a brief transition. They'll join us in here for the rest of the service. We'll serve the Lord's Supper after that point for those who need to take the bread and the wine in the evening. And we'll have an abbreviated lesson. I know some of you are going to be really disappointed about that, but an abbreviated lesson, probably 10, 12, 15, who knows, 20 minutes, probably no more than 10 or 15, but very focused, hopefully very encouraging, and still get out of here by 6 or a little after. So it's the best of both worlds. We get to accomplish a lot while we're here together. Speaking of Moses, which we really weren't, but sometimes you don't have time for smooth transitions. You just got to shift without the clutch, and I don't have time for segues this morning. So Moses, up on the mountain, with the Lord. He receives instruction, he receives the law of the Lord, And it's not just the Ten Commandments. This is a theocratic law that is given in regard to every aspect of life. Moral matters, obviously, ethical matters, but civil matters, legal matters, social matters, and worship matters. Issues of how they're supposed to worship their God. So there's a lot in the law, in the instruction that God gives to Moses on the mountain about priesthood, and who can be priests and what kind of priests they're supposed to be, sacrifices in great detail, feast days, festival days, and the construction of a place where all of this would happen. A tabernacle, a worship tent, if you will. It's a portable sanctuary. It can be put together, it can be disassembled, it can be moved, short distance, great distance, and it can be set up again. And that's what's going to take place for 40 years in the wilderness. And so God provides instruction in intricate, minutely detailed fashion on how this structure was to be built, all the furnishings and accoutrements and other things that go with it. It's all there in the law. And, you know, sometimes the cure for insomnia is going back and reading a lot of those details in the law about all the hooks and the weavings and how all this was to fit together. So Moses gets the instructions, and he's coming down the mountain. I think he's excited to share what he's got from the Lord with the people. And I wish we could go right from the end of Exodus chapter 31, where he's coming down the mountain with the tablets of stone, right to the text that Jerry read for us this morning. Just right into the implementation. You know, how are we going to do this? Unfortunately, there's a parting going on when he gets down at the base of the mountain, and there's a golden calf who's the guest of honor at this party. And God's anger is stirred, and the people are punished. Moses prays for the people. He intercedes for the people. The people repent. The Lord relents, and they renew the covenant. And, you know, it's three sad chapters in there, 32, 33, 34. But it's like they've taken care of this now. They get it. This instruction that's coming down from the mountain about no graven images and worshiping only the Lord their God, he's serious about that. And so the covenant is renewed, and they're ready to implement the plan with the building of the tabernacle. So Jerry read for us first from Exodus 35:5. Moses says to the people, "Take from among you a contribution to the Lord. Whoever is of a willing heart, let him bring the Lord's contribution." This is not the tithe. This is not the required 10%. That was non-negotiable. That was a given. That was compulsory. That was expected. Notice this isn't connected with the tithe. This isn't connected to what's going to affect so much of what they have. This is a free will offering. This is above and beyond offering. This is a bonus offering. This is a because I want to offering. This is a God has been so good to me and God is so great that I want to praise Him and I want to thank Him. So Lord, this is for you. This is even a can I give some more please offering. No limit. No restrictions on what the people could give. And the response was overwhelming. It says in verse 31 of chapter 35, everyone whose heart stirred him and everyone whose spirit moved him came and brought the Lord's contribution. Apparently there was a whole lot of stirring going on in the hearts of the people. There was a whole lot of moving going on in the spirits of the people. To the extent that the workers and the supervisors, a couple of guys named Bezalel and Oholiab, they come to Moses and say, we're out of storage space. We don't have warehousing for this. We've got enough, and we've got more than enough, and every morning the people show up with more. And so that's why Moses makes this proclamation. He issues a command and a proclamation circulated throughout the camp saying, let neither man or woman any longer perform work for the contributions of the sanctuary. Thus the people were restrained from bringing more, for the material they had was sufficient and more than enough for all the work to perform it. And that's incredible. that the people stepped up in that fashion and provided for the tabernacle in such a wonderful way. And so for the next 40 years, this is going to be carted around the wilderness. Sometimes it rests for short periods of time, sometimes for longer durations, but you break it apart, you pack it up. You even had people identified as to who would carry what, and you go to the next place and you set up camp again. And not just the 40 years in the wilderness, but for 450 years after that, until the temple is built in Solomon's reign, it rests in a handful of semi-permanent locations. So for about 500 years, this is going to be a place of worship for the people of God. But just a question here, what kind of shape do you think it was in just at the end of those 40 years? The Scripture says that God didn't allow their shoes to wear out, okay? During that 40 years in the wilderness, that was nice. Footwear lasts 40 years. You don't have to worry about replacements. Doesn't say that about everything else. So I'm thinking the tabernacle probably looks pretty rough at the end of 40 years. Needs some substantial repairs, replacement of parts. It needs some updating. And just by coincidence or not, this auditorium has been used as a place of worship for God's people for 40 years. Just by coincidence. It's been 40 years. November the 4th, 1973, we just marked that anniversary last fall. That was the first Sunday in this auditorium where the Broken Arrow Church of Christ moved their worship assembly from the old auditorium, the fellowship hall, into this large, comfortable, spacious room. I'm told that that wasn't the first event in the room, however. The previous day, November the 3rd, Russ and Terry Wadsworth were married right here on that Saturday. That Wednesday of that week, those of you who are planning weddings now or have done that, you know all the stress, as late as Wednesday of that week, there was still no certificate of occupancy for this room. So they didn't know if they were going to get married in here or they were going to get married in there, and I don't think that was figured out till Thursday or Friday. So, you know, little stress there. But 40 years ago, and like the tabernacle, after 40 years, this place is showing some wear and tear after 40 years. Not Russ and Terry. They look exactly the same as they did. But, you know, time and wear and tear have taken some effect on this room. All structures periodically need updating and refurbishing due to the passage of time and natural wear and tear. Unfortunately, my family's house is going to have to experience some of that in the spring. Exterior painting needs to be done. There's a lot of old chipped paint that needs to be sanded down, needs to be primed, needs to be painted. I'm hoping I can do as much of it as possible, but then I got some weatherboarding on the outside of the chimney that's weather damaged. I mean, seriously weather damaged. I don't know how much that's going to cost. So we all know what it's like when our own homes need some attention. Just like our individual houses needed, our collective house here at the Broken Arrow Church needs it. And I would say that just like our individual houses need it, God's house needs it, but we know this isn't God's house, right? We know that this isn't the sanctuary of God. Not like the tabernacle was, not like the temple was, where God caused His presence to dwell in a very, very special way. God's presence is as real in this room, no less real, no more real than it is out in the foyer, or in the hallways, or in the classrooms, or in the fellowship hall, or over in the OC. God's bigger than this room. You can't hem Him up in here. You can't bottle Him up. You can't tell Him to stay in here. He's going to go home with you. He's already there. So we understand, like Paul says in Acts chapter 17, that the God who made the world and all things in it, since He's Lord of heaven and earth, He doesn't dwell in temples made with hands. So this isn't God's house. This is God's house. You're God's house. And that's what Scripture tells us. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 5, you also, that's you, as living stones are being built up as a spiritual house for a holy priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. You're God's field, you're God's building. So if there's a house of God around here, it's us. You know, it's not made of wood and steel and other materials. We are the house of God. And God has richly blessed this church over the years with facilities that have met the needs of this congregation for worship and for study and for fellowship and for outreach into our community. We're extremely grateful to God for that blessing, for the sacrifices by people, many of whom are now gone. But the sacrifices and commitment of people before us that allows us to enjoy what we enjoy. And just think about it. 40 years ago, 1973, building something like this, that was pretty gutsy. That was pretty bold. That was pretty daring. That was ambitious, showed a lot of faith, showed a lot of commitment, showed a lot of trust in God and in one another. I think it was big and bold when they did this 40 years ago. In church, it's time to be bold again. It's time to be ambitious again. Not that we need to build an entirely new structure, thankfully not. We just need to give some attention to this one. And it's already been getting some significant attention over the last year. And I hope you've noticed a lot of this. Probably wasn't much later than this last year. We started with paint out in the foyer, in the hallways, and then we moved into the fellowship hall. And then now in the north wing. And, a lot of this painting that's going on has gone on, that we see the benefits of and see the blessings of. Mike and Karen Baskett have been the catalyst and the energy behind a lot of that. And there was a regular painting crew that worked. You guys know who you are. But guys, I don't tell you often enough how much I love you and appreciate you. So Mike, stand up. I'm going to give you a hug and I'm going to kiss you on your left cheek. All right? Pass that on to Karen. They, have helped to see, this happen. And that just triggered other things. Braden King, his Eagle Scout project, I don't know if you noticed in the OC, I hope you did, because the contrast is stark and slaps you right in the face. With Mike's help also and another work crew, young and old, they reinforced those columns on the lower part of the OC gym floor that were beaten up, banged up, caved in, in so many places. Reinforced that with how thick? 3/4 inch plyboard. Painted that, patched the gazillion holes that were there, painted that. That looks so much better. Loretta Turner and Lori Lundy spearheaded the updating of the bathrooms, and there was a crew that worked to install those fixtures. Lee and Jerry, kiss your own wives. Thank them for that. And then just recently, just things like getting the carpet cleaned down in the south wing. And there were so many of you that helped that Sunday night to get that stuff out of there and then came back on that Saturday morning after the carpets were cleaned on Thursday to get that back in order. So a lot of this work has been done ourselves. Just labor costs. No labor costs, just materials, paint and other things, and that's made a huge difference. So thank you to everybody who's been involved in that. We have taken a very economical approach to those improvements, showed wonderful stewardship in that regard. But we've done about all the volunteer work we can do on some of these things. And we're getting to the paid work, and that's what we're going to talk about the rest of the morning. How did this project get started? Well, about a year ago, we started talking about the need to replace the carpet. Terry and Russ were pretty sure this is the original carpet from 40 years ago. If you've wondered if we've gotten our money's worth out of it, yes, we have. Wish other things would last that long and hold up that well. But we started talking about replacing the carpet, updating the seating, doing the painting that would also need to be done to match any change of color scheme. The question of acoustics came up because while we have a wonderful sound system and the room gets full of sound, it's kind of dead out there, sound coming from there, our voices, which is the way we worship if you didn't notice. And so we enlisted the aid of an architect, Wally Wozencraft, wonderful architect, delightful older gentleman. And he's worked in helping the 10th and Rockford congregation. I think he's working with Glenpool right now and helping them with their facilities. And Wally really thought initially that there was overkill with these acoustical panels, that whatever they were trying to correct, they did to the max, and went from sound going everywhere to sound going nowhere. And he really thought we were going to need to build some little protrusions to kind of bounce sound back in. Had 3 independent sound engineers come in and say, no, Wally, you're wrong. It takes a lot for anybody to admit they're wrong. He admitted he was wrong 3 times. And he said, all of them said your big problem's your big, thick, cushy carpet. It just sucks up sound. And so you need hard surfacing, or you need hard carpet, glue down carpet. We started sharing these ideas with our building deacons at the time, and they were for it, but basically said, why stop there? And started going into all these things they were talking about our need to redo the front of the auditorium here, to lower this, to extend this, to redo the facade up here with something more contemporary like cultured stone. And they said, run that by Wally and see what they can do with it. So in August, we communicated to you on 3 consecutive Sunday mornings that these were the things we were looking at, which brings us to the present and the scope of the project. We'll get through in time for Bible class. We may have to run from here to Bible class, but Bible classes still should be able to start about 10:30. The scope of the project, first of all, carpeting. These are going to be low-pile, glue-down squares. The great benefit of carpet squares is you mess one up, you pull it up, and you replace the square. You don't have a long run that you have to do something with or try to cover up. Seating. We looked into this. To repad and refinish these pews would cost about $100,000. To replace these pews would cost about $150,000. If we used padded, wide, interlocking chairs, like we have in a lot of the classrooms in this part of the building, that would run us about $60,000. So on the side of chairs, we have stewardship, cost effectiveness. We've got flexibility of configuration. If we want a center aisle, we make ourselves a center aisle. If you want it for a wedding, if it's more conducive during a funeral. So we got the flexibility of configuration and versatility of use, plus a more intimate, conducive arrangement for worship, more of a fan-shaped configuration. And I apologize that this is going to be really small, but let me do the best I can here. Something like this, okay? And I'm going to speed up. We're going to send you a letter this week detailing some of this, and I'll put this and something else in there so you can look at it a little more closely. That's the kind of seating configuration we'd be looking at, rather than these chairs over here facing this wall. We're all kind of facing one another. Paint, obviously, something much more neutral scheme to go with the new color scheme, which hasn't been determined yet. Podium area. Like I said, that's going to be lowered probably by a step. It's going to be rounded. It's going to be extended further out. So we got people over here and people over here, and it doesn't seem so distant. This is ramped entrance up the sides here. And this is a low kind of retaining wall type thing where, greenery or seasonal type stuff could be put. Let me come back to some of this other stuff in a second. Cultured stone. These areas up here to either side of the baptistry, the wall down here, cultured stone. These new walls, they're going to be like right here, if you can look to your right, and right here. If you look to your left, they'll only extend out about that far, create a little hallway back behind them going to the current doors. And you can kind of see this is the existing wall right here, and this will be the new, what did I call that? Okay, we got the ramped access, I already showed you that. And the bowl effect, all right? So this is wasted space over here. You see anybody sitting over there? I don't either. You see anybody sitting over there? I don't either. Wasted space, okay? So we're going to use that space, and we're going to build these little walls here, And for the benefit of people sitting over here that are sitting like this, there's going to be a screen on that wall so they can see it. This screen's still going to be here. People sitting over there, there's going to be a screen on this wall that you can see. All right, so you still got the 3 screens, just angled. Angle on that wall is significantly sharper than the existing wall right there. This just gives you a little closer view. I'll send you a copy of this as well. That just shows you how the platform will look with the steps down, how the ramp entrance comes in behind this little wall. Cultured stone here, cultured stone there, cast capstone on the tops of those. And that brings us to the cost of the project. It's about $275,000 to $300,000. This is best guess estimate, and this isn't a shot in the dark. This is based on real costs that we have been given and a few bids that have come in. We decided if we were going to change the carpet in here, it doesn't make a lot of sense to leave that carpet down in the foyer like it is. There's about 2,000 square yards in here. We got a big foyer and hallways. Would you believe there's 1,000 square yards out there? So it'll take about 50% of what it's going to cost to carpet in here. It's carpet out there. 900 chairs, it's $70 a pop. Cost us $63,000. Paint, at first we thought this was low. Got a first estimate in, Rich did last week, just blew my doors off and laid my ears back, and I thought, oh no, whole scenario's blown. It's going to cost $20,000 to paint this room. Second bid came in at just under $5,000. Plus, some other things that may take us up to $8,000. But that's where that comes from. And then doing all of that we just looked at the front, $152,000, that comes to $291,000. And again, we think somewhere in between $275,000 and $300,000 will be the cost of the project. Yeah, but, okay, why would we want to take on additional debt when we still have a few years left to pay off the OC? The great thing about this is there's no intention of incurring debt. We want to pay for this year. We want to do it and pay for it this year, and we'll only do what we commit to pay for, and that depends on us. Okay, you accept we're not going to take on indebtedness with this. Why would we want to do this rather than pay down the debt on the OC? Well, for the same reason that each of us, even though we're paying a mortgage payment every month, we still get new carpet sometimes. We still paint. We still get new furniture sometimes, even though we've got a mortgage. And so it doesn't make sense to wait until everything is paid off until we make those needed improvements. Yeah, but what about missions? Is this going to take money away from that or other congregational priorities? No, those budgets have been set already. Yesterday morning to the deacons and ministry leaders, those budgets were communicated, and not a dime is going to come out of those. Again, this is an above and beyond project. Nothing's going to come away from missions or anything else in order to accomplish it. Why spend so much on cosmetics and appearances? Well, first of all, in the big picture of facilities construction, that dollar figure is not so much. And while brick and mortar will never be our top priority, we have to realize that curb appeal and the condition and appearance of our facility communicates something to visitors, seekers, and people in the community. It sends nonverbal signals. We only get a chance to make a first impression once. Think about that. You only make a first impression once, and many people's first impressions of the appearance of the facility hasn't been all that great. Is that the most important thing? No. Is that an important thing? Absolutely. And so what we can communicate non-verbally is either the concepts of new and contemporary and forward-thinking and enthusiastically prepared for the future, or we can communicate old, outdated, self-satisfied living in the past and not expecting to be around here very long. What we want to communicate to people is that we expect to be here this time next year, and 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, and 25 years from now, and 50 years from now. Not me personally. You will have long since asked me to leave or buried me, within 50 years. I hope I'm not alive 50 years from now. When I go, pack me up, ship me back to Marshall County, Tennessee. There's a plot waiting for me there. But, somebody's going to be here if the Lord doesn't come back first. Somebody's going to be here. So the question, can we do this? Absolutely, we can do this. When we first started talking about it a year ago, people got excited. They started saying things like, just let me know what I can do. When can I write a check? I'll let you know in just a minute. And, some people said, count me in for a row of chairs. I'll buy a row of chairs. And they were so excited about this. There is one anonymous, generous source within the congregation that's so excited about it and feels so strongly that this work needs to be done that they have said they will contribute $125,000 to see that it gets done. Yeah, that's what I said. $125,000. At first that was going to be, presented as possibility of matching funds, and then they came back and said, no, that's a hard commitment. You can count on it. Even math challenged people like me know that's nearly half of what we need to do this project. So it's up to us as the rest of the family to provide the rest of the resources that are necessary. So how can this be done this year? Well, some people will be able to give a few $1,000s. I mean, they've told me they could and would. Others may be able to give a few $100s. But it's not going to be equal gifts in amount, but there's going to be equal sacrifice. In our reading, some people brought gold, silver, bronze. Other people brought oil for lamps. Other people brought spices for incense based on their ability and based on their willingness. So we hope as much can be given 2 weeks from today up front as possible. But if you're like a lot of us, you don't have all that readily available up front. So we'll give you the opportunity to make a commitment for the 12 months of this year about how much you could do each month. If just 200 families of our roughly 400 families, if just 200 families committed $75 a month, that would do it. If 250 families committed $60 a month, that would do it. That would get us to $175,000. And again, we're hoping we can get as much of that up front. Some of you were blessed with year-end bonuses. Others of you will be expecting tax returns. We can reduce our meals out. We can cut back on Starbucks or Rocket Brothers or whatever our favorite culinary weakness happens to be. And, if, somebody asks the question, well, what if the contributions and commitments on the 26th, 2 weeks from today, what if they far exceed $300,000? Then we'll pull a Moses on you and get up and tell you to stop. I'd love to make that announcement. Stop it. Stop writing all these checks. So give as much as you can. Give as much as you want to, because that's what this is about. This is want to kind of giving, which is the very best kind of giving. I did a very small thing for somebody last week, very small gift, and they said, thanks, but you didn't have to do that. I said, I know, I didn't have to do it. Isn't it great to do things just because you want to do things? Bless people because you want to bless people? So let's do this, church, okay? Because we want to. Let's do it because we want to, and let's do it because we need to. And again, the when, 2 weeks from today, we'll be mailing a letter, a contribution card, pledge card, sample, that we'll ask you to think about, pray about, and talk to your family about. And then contribute as much as you can on January the 26th. If you need to spread that out over the course of the year, you can indicate how much you'll be giving monthly toward this project. And if the contributions and commitments together are there, then we can start work this spring. If we're confident that's going to be there, if enough percentage is there to get started and we know the rest is coming in later, we'll get turned loose on this this spring. And it may require, in that fulfillment period, a little bridge financing at still historically low interest rates. But we're talking about a matter of months here, few months, carrying nothing over into 2015. We're going to need to worship in the OC while work is being done in here, and that in itself is exciting and a welcome change of pace from our normal routine, and more about that when we get to that point. Well, Tim, what if the full amount of contributions and commitments aren't there? Then we'll do what we can do. We'll do the portion of the project that we as a congregation say that we want to do and that we're willing to pay for. But I'm confident that the result will be the entire project. This totally different context, but after they came back from captivity, everybody was excited. They laid the foundation of the temple, and then they got distracted with other things. And for 15 years, nothing was done until Haggai and Zechariah, the two prophets, show up and say, okay, You've had enough time to fix up your own paneled houses while this house lies desolate, talking about the temple of God. This house is far from desolate, but it has suffered some wear and tear and some neglect that we need to address. And the whole reason we're doing this is because Jesus is coming back, okay? And we don't know when. Could be this afternoon, could be 5, 10, 15, 25, 50 years from now, I don't know. But our desire is that however long that is, there is a strong, numerically strong and spiritually strong, faithful, vibrant, serving group of God's people who are sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ in Broken Arrow and serving the needs of the people in this community. We want to help ensure that that's the case. And we can't get there with things like they are right now. I'm going to ask, we're going to stand in stages today. Lee, we're going to sing in just a second, and you won't make it to Bible class by 10:30, I don't think. But that's okay. We'll start close to then. I was 11 years old when this was built, okay? I was 11 years old. And I got to thinking about, in 1973, who the youth were, okay? We got 3s, 4s, and 5s right now in Bible hour, but so I limited it to ages 6 through 18. If you were 6 through 18 in 1973, it means you're 46 to 58 now. And I want to ask you to stand if you're 46 to 58. Now, kids, all of these people are 46, okay? None of them are really in their 50s. And if you are older than 58 and want people to think you're 58, you stand up too, okay? But if you are 46 years old to 58 years old, stand up. We're wasting time. Here we go. Stand up. Stay standing, all right? Stand up. Any of you wannabes want to join the 58-year-olds? Feel free. Okay. If you are currently, and I'm thinking about 40 years from now, okay? After we do this, what it's going to look like 40 years from now. If you are currently 6 years old to 18, stand up. 6 years old to 18. You guys look around at these other folks. Sorry about that. I wish I could tell you it was going to get better. But that's what you've got to look forward to, 40 years from now. We want this group 40 years from now, and their husbands and their wives and their children and their grandchildren to enjoy the kinds of things we've been able to enjoy here. The rest of you stand up too. We're all in this together now. And we're hoping to do that. As we sing this song, it's a reminder that this isn't a sanctuary. This is a sanctuary. You are. And if you want to be a sanctuary of God through the Holy Spirit, through obedience to the gospel of Christ, whatever need you have, we're going to have a couple of shepherds up here, and you can come and make that known. Let's sing.